Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:01. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Allred,
Here.
Mr. Andreessen,
Here.
Mr. Fell,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins,
Here.
Ms. McFarland, Mr. Rose, Ms. Sims,
Here.
and Ms. Yu.
Sorry. Here.
Okay, so it looks like we have a quorum. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, approval of the minutes. We have two past meetings with minutes to approve. We'll take these one at a time. Approval of the minutes from the February 2025 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any comments on these meetings? Or is anyone ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve the meeting minutes.
All right, it's been a while. Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Yu. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hopkins. Any discussion on the motion? If not, we'll do.
Two sets of minutes or one set?
I said that we'd just do one at a time, so
Okay.
I don't know. Can we do them both at the same time?
You can do them both at the same time.
Okay, so let me go back. So approval of the minutes from both the February 20 and February 27. February 20th was a regular meeting. February 27th was a special meeting, 2025. Do we need a new motion or?
Might as well.
Okay, so can we have a new motion to approve both of those meetings, minutes?
I move that we approve both of those meeting minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ms. Yu. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Hopkins. Any discussion on that motion? If not, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. Communications. Do we have any communications?
Yes, we received 4 communications that all came in the past couple of days regarding the case tonight, Plan Case 2508 SU-25. To summarize, some of those concerns were, I'd say the main concern seemed to be parking, some concerns about traffic and safety or, I guess, security plans. There's some questions about maintenance, like with cleaning staff and groundskeepers. A question about whether there would be a kitchen and if that would be available to guests, and a limit on how long a guest can stay. I can answer some of these when the case is there, so they're part of the record. So, and a suggestion that there be a full-time staff person on site, which I believe there will be. But, yep.
Okay, thanks. Okay, old business. We have no old business, or sorry, continued public hearings. We have no continued public hearings. Old business. We have no old business, which brings us to our new public hearing. Just let me go over how this is going to work. First, we'll have a presentation from staff explaining the background of the case, the standards that apply, and staff's assessment of how the applicable standards have been met or not by the applicant. And finally, staff's recommendation to Plan Commission. Then we'll have a chance for the commission to ask staff questions about the case, followed by an opportunity for the petitioner to address the commission if they want. After that, we'll open it up to the public, which I'm not sure we have anyone here, but it's early, so they might show up, who will be able to address the commission about the case. If needed, we'll give a chance to the petitioner to address any of those concerns raised by the public. And then we'll close the public input portion and move into discussion amongst the commission and possibly vote. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms.
before we
Fell.
begin, I need to recuse myself from the case. I worked with Mr. Bagley on his previous similar project for Urbana and had conversations with staff about that project, so.
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you.
So for the record, Mr. Fell is going to be recusing himself from this case. All right, Mr. Garcia.
Okay. Good evening. So there's a request by Halton Bagley for to allow a hostel at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. Let's hope that helps. Okay. So in case you're not familiar with hostels, hostels are similar to hotels. They provide overnight accommodation, but they're typically more budget friendly. They usually cater to a younger clientele, and they have shared sleeping and bathroom facilities. The closest use to a hostel in the table of uses is a hotel. And hotels are allowed in the R7 zoning district in existing buildings with a special use permit. The building at 1205 South Lincoln Avenue is the former Kappa Delta sorority house. Kappa Delta sold the building in 2017.
Sorry, Mr. Garcia, can I interrupt you? I realized that I forgot to read the case into the record, so I feel like I should probably
I'm
read
sorry, yeah, yes.
that. So this is plan case number 2508 SU25, a request by Halton Bagley for a special use permit to allow a hostel at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue in the R7 University Residential Zoning District. So it's probably make more sense based on what we're talking about now.
Okay,
Sorry.
yeah.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
We did this every week for a while, and we didn't do it for months. So.
We did. So welcome back, everybody. Okay, so the building at 1204 South Lincoln Avenue, it's the former Kappa Delta sorority house. They sold it in 2017 to a fraternity, but it has been vacant since 2021. The property was purchased by Jim Webster in June of last year, and Mr. Webster has given Mr. Bagley his consent to apply for a special use permit. If the special use permit is granted, Mr. Bagley intends to purchase the property, renovate it for the hostel, and then live in it and be the owner-operator of the hostel. The site is, as you can see here, it's located along Lincoln Avenue. It's on the southeast corner of Lincoln and Indiana Avenue. It's directly across the street from the McKinley Health Center on the University of Illinois campus. So this whole area over here is campus. And then nearby, so the Twin City Bible Church is to the south. That church actually owns these parcels and this parcel as well. So all the adjacent parcels on the block are owned by Twin City Bible Church. And then there's housing of various levels of intensity in the rest of the surrounding area. So just to sort of show the, and this is actually wrong. As I said, the Twin City Bible Church owns this, so this should actually be colored as a religious use. But mostly residential, and then across the street, the land use is the institutional land use for the university. Zoning-wise, this property is zoned R7, which is university residential. To refresh everybody's memories, university residential contains all of our Greek houses, so all the former fraternities and sororities. It also contains several group houses that, typically housing large groups of students. Also, or to the west is conservation, recreation, and education. That's for the university. And then R5, which is multifamily to the north, and then mostly R2, which is single-family residential. The future land use map identifies this as university residential. I'll talk about that in a bit. And then residential to the east and a bit further south, and then institutional on the west side. So the proposed use, again, is a hostel, which is similar to a hotel. And I found a nice article on the website nerdwallet.com, so you know it's a good source of info. And it says that, or it summarizes the differences by saying that hotels tend to offer more privacy, security, and amenities, and can range in style from budget to deluxe. Hostels, meanwhile, cater to travelers who are interested in more communal experiences, typically offering residence hall-like rooms, group activities, and shared bathrooms and kitchens. Both hotels and hostels range in cost, but hostels are generally more affordable. The proposed hostel would have a maximum capacity, it's estimated around 60 guests. That would all be dependent on the building code analysis. And that is less than the current maximum occupancy on the certificate of occupancy as a sorority or fraternity, and which is 67. The layout of the building would remain essentially unchanged, and there would be no changes made to the exterior. There would be 10 private rooms, 10 to 11 shared rooms, 6 full, that is, private bathrooms, and 2 community bathrooms, each with 4 showers, 7 sinks, and 3 toilets. The applicant doesn't plan many changes to the interior other than refinishing some floors and adding some furniture. As stated before, the applicant will live in and operate the hostel, and they'll have policies such as quiet hours beginning at 10 p.m. nightly and no alcohol on site, and a minimum age of 18 to check in. With respect to parking, there are 11 on-site parking spaces. The applicant has been in contact with the city's finance department to purchase single-day guest passes to have on hand if needed for extra parking. He's also been in contact with the U of I about reserving space in Lot 11 over here, which is a 2-minute walk from the site. And I'm sure Mr. Bagley can provide more details on the conversations he's had regarding parking. And just for context, I reached out to our finance department. I'm waiting to hear back on how many residential permits had been pulled while this was still in use as a sorority. But we did do some research back in 2017 for sort of the whole area in West Urbana and around campus as well. And back then, when it was still being used as a Greek house, there were 14 residential permits that were issued. Also, interestingly, on the block north, which has 3 fraternities and sororities, there were 66 residential permits pulled for that whole block. I'll talk a little bit more about parking permits and such in a couple of minutes. Typically, for a hotel, we'd require 20 to 21 spaces for a hotel with this number of rooms, just to put that into context as well. So the building used to be under the university's private certified housing program, so it had regular inspections, but a hostel would be a new use, and it's classified as transient housing, and that would require a full code analysis and new inspections of the building prior to occupancy. Just for a little background, transient uses like hotels and things have higher standards than higher safety standards due to the people staying there aren't familiar with the layout of the building as you would be if you were living there. Okay, so the comprehensive plan, as shown on the map here, designates this property's future land use as university residential. Interestingly, the plan doesn't actually define university residential. So in this instance, I looked to the zoning ordinance for some guidance, which defines the university residential zoning district as intended to provide areas in proximity to the U of I for dorms and rooming houses, which are occupied primarily by students, to ensure the longevity of the architectural character and use of these existing buildings, and to protect nearby low-density residential uses from incompatible developments. The R7 district Also allows some business uses within existing structures. The district is intended to encourage the adaptive reuse of existing older structures. So in this case, the proposal aligns really well with the intent of the district. It would adaptively reuse an existing architecturally significant building that's been vacant for 4 years. It would not alter its exterior. And it would also be generally compatible with the nearby residential districts and with the university. The proposal aligns with several goals and objectives of the plan. Those are laid out in the memo. I'm not going to go through those, but generally those are about sort of preserving existing structures and the character in neighborhoods. Okay, so for the requirements of a special use permit, the first one is that the proposed use is conducive to the public convenience at that location. But before I get to that, I'm going to go through just some photos to give a little bit more context. So here's an oblique image. On the bottom of this image, you see the McKinley Health Center. So this is looking sort of east. In the middle, you see the property at hand. The Twin City Bible Church is over here to the south, and they have this property and this property as well. And a couple apartment buildings to the north along Lincoln Avenue. There's also some fraternity, sorority houses up here along Lincoln that you can't see. And then just, further east, you get into the West Urbana neighborhood. This is looking southwest from Indiana Avenue. So you see the building and then a driveway, which is a shared driveway. There's an agreement between the Twin City Bible Church and Mr. Webster to use, to have shared access to that driveway. And then looking west, you see the McKinley Health Center and then the building 1204 on the left. Going over to Lincoln Avenue, looking southeast, this is what the building looks like. And then there's just another view of the entrance looking east from the Lincoln Avenue sidewalk. Looking sort of northeast from Lincoln Avenue as well. That's a nice picture of the building. And then just for more context, this is looking north along Lincoln Avenue. With the building on the right side. This is looking at northwest, so this is back. You can see some of the parking, and then just, that's behind the house, sort of a parking area, alley type area. And then here's that shared drive looking back, or looking north, back towards Indiana Avenue. Okay, so back to the criteria for the special use permit. There are 3. So number 1 is that the proposed use is conducive to the public convenience at that location. The proposed use is conducive to the public convenience. It's easily accessible, whether people are walking, biking, taking an Uber, riding a VO, driving, or taking the bus. The only similar uses are the hotels at the Gather, which is at University in Lincoln, which has around 30 hotel rooms, and the Hotel Royer, which is downtown, which has, I believe it has 129, but somewhere around 125, let's say. Neither of those options are likely to be very affordable to the student demographic the applicant is targeting, and neither are as close and conveniently located to the university as this proposal. So we find that criteria is met. Number 2 is that the proposed use will not be unreasonably injurious or detrimental to the district it's located in or otherwise injurious to the public welfare. So if anything, the proposed use is likely to be less of a nuisance than if the building was continued to be used as a Greek house. Not all Greek houses are allowed and have lots of parties. I'll just state that. So that's why I said it's less likely. But there are the proposed policies or the planned policies to have quiet hours at 10 p.m. every night and no alcohol on site should really mitigate those types of nuisances. The only other potential nuisance, which came out in a lot of the comments we received, is about on-street parking. So I see this to be less of an issue given the use than if it were used as a Greek house still, because the city issues, or we require permits on all of the surrounding streets. So you need to have a permit to park overnight on the surrounding streets. And we issue residential permits. If you live in a building, you can get a residential permit. So it's, we'll see Greek houses, as I mentioned, the block to the north. One of the Greek houses on the block to the north in 2017 had 33 on-street parking permits that were issued to it. There are certainly not 33 parking spaces on that block. And in addition, there were another 33 for that entire block that were issued. So residential permits, if you live somewhere, we will issue you a residential permit for a fee. In this case, there will be no residential permits. So all of the permits available would be guest permits. The applicant's, again, been in contact with our finance department about purchasing guest permits in case they have overflow parking and needs for that. And as I mentioned, back in 2017, this house had 14 permits that were pulled for it, which is not a small number. So I feel like this would be a less of a parking burden. Also, there's the option to I believe bag some meters in lot 11 to be used for overflow parking if they need it. But it's also expected that most of the people staying here will not have a private automobile. The target demographic of the folks that are staying here are students or younger people who are looking for more of a budget accommodation. So it's less likely that they would have a private automobile than somebody, say, staying at a hotel elsewhere. So it's expected people will be arriving by train, taking the bus, taking rideshare, et cetera. So we find this criteria met. The third criteria is that the proposed use conforms to the regulations and standards of and preserves the essential character of the district in which it shall be located. So the proposed use is really the type of adaptive reuse we envisioned when we made changes to the R7 zoning district back in 2022. We were hoping that when a Greek house went vacant for multiple years, because that it would be able to be reused, because we saw a lot of Greek houses or there's just a lot less demand these days for Greek houses than there used to be. So that's why we made those changes a few years ago. And so it's good to see a proposed use that would be reusing the building, would not be seeking to change anything to the exterior of it. So it would really preserve the character of the neighborhood, of the architecture. So we find that this criteria is met as well. Just one note, when we made those changes back in 2022, we did add some statements about parking. So we require no additional parking for new uses in existing buildings, except for commercial uses. We stated that additional parking may be required as a condition of a special use permit. So if you chose to, you could impose some conditions about parking in this case. We don't feel it will be an issue, so we don't recommend that you add any parking conditions. But I would say if you wanted to consider it, I'd suggest that capping the number of on-street parking permits they could use per night would be a pretty reasonable way to do it. So that's my thoughts on that. But the recommendation is to send this to City Council with a recommendation to approve the proposed special use permit with no conditions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Are there any questions for staff? It's you.
Kevin, I wonder if you remember many years ago, maybe, I think it was my first Plan Commission meeting here. I think it was 713 Ohio, so it's a block away from this property, when it was a vacant group house and wanted to convert it to a church with some potential boarding. And have you looked back into that case, see what was the focal point of discussion for that one? Was parking a big one? And what's some other considerations?
Yeah. No, I hadn't looked back at that case. So I don't recall, and that wasn't my case. I think Marcus handled that case. So I can't recall what the big issues were with that. I know they got approval to use it as a church, and I believe they do have some apartments on the upper floors. But I can't recall off the top of my head what the major issues were there. So if somebody else has a better memory than I do.
I don't think I was here.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
I will add that whatever concerns came out of that, I don't think we've received any sort of complaints about that building. It seems like it fits in pretty well. So if parking, say, were a concern, I haven't heard any complaints about it.
Mr. Hopkins?
Yeah, I remember the case too. And I think it was what I'll call the typical West Urbana R7 type concerns, which obviously include parking. But I think the key thing is what you said. It did actually get approved. And it has not generated a history that caused problems.
So I live really close to both this property. What I can tell you is that that church converted into a church with some living. It's very low usage. You don't see many cars parked over there. It's just very low impact to the neighborhood, much lower than the original Greek house was.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a few questions. So I read that line about that we put in there about no additional parking requirements for a new use, which was a little confusing, and I wasn't sure how to interpret that. Are you saying that there are no parking requirements for this as a use?
Correct. So unless you wanted to add that as a condition, there's no requirement for them to add any additional parking.
Okay, not add, but so right now it's a dormitory or a rooming house, right? Which has a requirement of one parking space for every two residents. So if it converts to something else, that you interpret that language to mean that there's no requirements, period, or there are just the original requirements?
So
I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Well, I've got it right here. So the intent was to incentivize reuse of buildings, which would be pretty much impossible, say, if you were to convert one of these into an apartment building, let's say, because, like in this case, there's 11 parking spaces on site. If you converted that to an apartment building, you would not be able to, you'd probably need, the requirements for a standard apartment building would probably far exceed 11. So I think where is it? It's somewhere in here. Okay. Yeah, so it says no additional parking is required for new uses in existing buildings. So it's whatever parking is there, you need to keep. If I mean, unless of course the new use was less than the required parking would be, but that's the intent, and I mean, I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah. I think it's less than clear, but I think what the intent was is some kind of use that was maintaining some part of the original use, but taking up some use in part of the building, and you wouldn't have to have additional parking for that. So there would still be the additional, or there would still be the original parking requirements. But yeah, I could see this being read the wrong way. It doesn't seem, well, we can get into this in discussion about the parking impact, but
Okay.
I just wanted to be clear about how that's being interpreted, because it was kind of confusing to me when I looked over that rule versus looked at the table for parking requirements for the city. Does that apply to bike parking too?
Yeah, I don't think we changed. Well, no, we didn't change the bike parking language. So let me see. I can read what that's.
Might be more relevant if we're assuming that people will be less likely to have cars, but maybe that might be more important.
So yeah, the bicycle parking requirements are. So I think we'd consider this a commercial use. So we'd say 10% of required automobile parking up to a maximum of 25 bicycle parking spaces. So
would that be based off of the theoretical required parking that's not required?
that's what I would, as the zoning administrator, that's what I'd base it off of.
Okay. So there would be bike parking required.
Yes.
The access for the parking area comes off of Indiana, is that correct?
It comes off of, so there's there's that shared one off of Indiana, but then there's also one here off of Lincoln.
Okay. So on the agenda later, we're talking about the Lincoln Avenue corridor study, and I think there was some intent of that to try and close off access from Lincoln where possible. I mean, is that something, is that an option to, if there's some of the concerns that were raised that I saw briefly in the emails had to do with, seems like where the parking is accessed from and where traffic is being generated onto, and if it's being generated onto one of the neighborhood versus collector streets as opposed to higher capacity Lincoln, and sort of deconflicting those things. Is that, I guess that's more of a question for the applicant, but I haven't had a chance to look at that, so I don't know if it's possible to, if that would be an issue to not have access from Lincoln or not.
Yeah, I mean, it might be. I'm not sure what the configuration is totally, but I'm pretty sure all the parking is sort of striped. I mean, you can always restripe parking, right?
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure if it would work.
Okay. So it seems like it's meant to be accessed off Lincoln.
I think so. Yeah, let me see if I can see some. Yeah, so the parking, so Lincoln's over here, and you can see the parking striping is facing that way. Definitely could use a restriping too. I don't think I have any better pictures of that. Hold on, maybe if I go, I might be able to see them from here. Yeah, so all the cars are parked like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And it does, this seems like a little wider access. Also, I think that the church might access their, I'm not sure. But yeah, something for discussion, sure.
Okay. And then last question. So this has been vacant. So there was a Greek house there for some years. Then they left, and then a new one came in, and then they left in 2021. Is that So
Yeah,
it's been vacant since 21?
correct.
Okay. What are do you have a sense of like the general trends? I mean, have there been Greek houses, these kinds of structures that have been vacated recently that have been filled by new Greek houses? Or is it generally that there are less interest in Greek houses taking these kinds of spaces? Or
I'm not sure I'm not sure. I don't know of any where it sort of swapped from one to another. I do know there's at least one other former Greek house in this area that's not been. I mean, I don't even know if it's being leased out at all. I think it's been vacant I think it's up on Oregon.
Uh-huh. Okay.
But I think the general trend is just there's less interest in Greek housing. And I think that's why I think it was 2019, Landmarks Illinois had identified Greek houses in Champaign-Urbana as being on their top 10 most endangered list that year, which is what spurred us to make changes to the R7 district to allow more uses in them.
Okay. So it seems unlikely that a new Greek chapter would.
I mean, I think so, and especially because it's been vacant for 4 years.
Yeah, just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify that. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Any other questions for staff? All right, thanks, Mr. Garcia. So just as a reminder, we'll have an opportunity for the petitioner to address the commission, and then I think we might have someone from the public in the audience who wants to address the commission. So I'll turn it over to the petitioner if they'd like to address the commission. Hi. Open forum, right? Yeah, is the mic on?
I don't think it's on. Yeah.
There's a little button in the front there.
And then could you sign in too on that sheet? Thanks.
And then just state your name. That should do it. Yeah, and then you can tell us
Hello?
what you'd like to say.
Is it on?
Yeah.
My name is Halton Bagley. First of all, this project has been a dream of mine for a very long time. I went to a state university in New York and had a wonderful time in college. So I know how the university system in the United States is a very formative period of years for America's youth, and it was for me. So that's one part of how this idea came. The second part is after I graduated college about 9 years ago, I started working in the corporate world and was able to work remotely and travel to different parts of the world in Europe and South America. And obviously was on a budget, didn't have a tremendous amount of money, so hostels are very popular in Europe and in South America and Asia, and allowed me to stay very affordably in these very cool cities and have a lot of cool experiences. So I've probably stayed in over 100 hostels in my life, and again, it was a very formative experience for me. So it's this blend of those two things that brought me here. And I first thought of this idea in 2017, right when I was out of college, but had no money or no money to do anything like this. And then, so I, put it on the back burner, if you call it. And then in 2021, I was like, okay, I'm going to save all my money, and I'm going to, work for the next X number of years to, live cheaply, save all my money, and, to be able to do this. So I first came out here in 2021 just to look at a property on West Green Street, 312 West Green, but it didn't work. It was too far from the university. And since then, I've been out about 4 or 5 different times to look at various properties, and finally found the one. So my goal here, worked for many years, saved all this money, and now I'm here to kind of put all these eggs in this basket and hopefully make this come to life. So my goal here is a few things. One, to make a safe space for visitors to the university of a younger demographic. So people visiting their friends who can't stay, let's say they go to the university they were high school friends and they go to the University of Indiana, and they come and visit their friend, and they can't stay in their dorm, or they need an affordable place to stay because a hotel is prohibitively expensive for them. Let's talk about events and sports at the University of Illinois. The basketball team and the football team are extremely well funded. They stay in the fancy hotels and the catering and, big Division I, Big Ten sports schools. But what about the fencing team or the water polo team that, might need to go, they've got 40 members, okay, we got to go spend $150 a night and block out these rooms at these hotels, where you can block out rooms at my hostel, be directly across the campus, have your bus drop you off, again, no parking, and pay a fraction of the cost. International students who get kicked out of the dorms during Thanksgiving, but I don't want to say they might celebrate Thanksgiving, but aren't going to go home to, their home country for 4 or 5 days. For example, when I was in college, my junior year, I went to college in Buffalo, so very cold. And in February, our heat went out for 3 weeks, and we didn't have a place to go. So on a 60,000 person campus, sometimes these things crop up, and it's like, where do I stay? Do I stay on a friend's couch? Do I have someone's couch who let me stay there? Is a hotel $200 a night, etc. Additionally, let's say you come to the United States to the University of Illinois, and you arrive August 5th, but your housing doesn't open until August 17th, and there's all these posts on the University of Illinois Reddit about, hey, does anyone know any short-term accommodation? Hotels are $200 a night, etc. So those are my also prospective students to the university who might want to come to the university or visit the university to see if they want to enroll and don't have the funds, maybe their parents aren't coming with their parents, or the parents don't have the funds to stay in a hotel. So those are my target, market and demographics. And my goal is to create a safe space close to the university with a communal atmosphere. I want to be a partner to the university and, all my neighbors around, because I think I can help the university in terms of, bringing visitors, bringing potential students, bringing, events, and, allowing for more events and more things to showcase the university. So those are my goals here, to create a safe space and be a partner for the university.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Bagley? Mr. Hopkins.
A couple of clarifications. European hostels that I've dealt with, the kitchen space is accessible to residents. I'm confused because something here says it will be closed to residents.
My thought on that, and I'm not wed to the idea, is that there's fire hazards in the kitchens and things like that. I plan to have refrigeration, water dispensers, things like that outside of the kitchen for use. But the actual kitchen space, I think, could be a bit of a, if I let people have access to it. I worry that it could be potentially a fire hazard or another thing to worry about. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Bagley?
So
Mr. Hopkins?
have you had, it was unclear to me whether you had any responses from the university about Lot 11?
Yes. So Lot 11 has, I haven't counted the exact amount. I drove past it like 3 times today, but it has at least 35 meter spots. You can bag them for $20 a day. So what my plan is I have my, well, first of all, my plan is to have less than half of my residents have cars. But let's say that they do. I have my 11 spots on property. Then I have my allocation of paid guest permits in the West Urbana neighborhood area. And then the University F11 lot. There's also the F9 lot, which is about a 4-minute walk away. Bag those meters, and then I would kind of dollar cost average the cost to my guests. So I'd have, these 11 free spots on the property. It'd be, let's say I have 5 spots on the street. Those are $3 each. And then I'd have, I don't know, 10 spots in those 2 lots in the university, cost $20 a day. So I would average those costs, $3, $20 free, and say offer a parking permit option upon reservation that's $8 or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, where is,
Fourth plan, if I need more, is
I just
to pay for spots around.
trying to get an idea of how you're imagining, and you've, I think, given a reasonable idea. Where is F9?
It is about,
Is that the one by Jimmy John's?
yes.
Okay, so it's the one by Jimmy John's Cafe Paradiso, the one that's just
Okay.
south of there.
Okay.
F11 is the preferable one because it's right across the street.
Ms. Sims?
So I just want to be sure I don't think that this is within our purview, but there were questions about like safety and what the structure would be for safety. So if you want to say what the plan is to address safety concerns that people were worried about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's manyfold. Complete camera coverage everywhere. 24-hour staff. Me being one of the 24-hour staff. And policies, as we discussed, about quiet hours, no alcohol, and then an escalation policy if things get out of hand. But 24-hour staff, complete security system, no alcohol, and open to more restrictions if needed.
Probably the last follow-up question would be, have you thought about what the policies for keeping it within the purview of a hotel, hostel or temporary shelter, so that, so what would be the policies in that area?
Yeah, so I plan to follow what hostels around the world traditionally do. They have a certain day limit. My plan is to do 14 days, so 2 weeks of continuous stay. Like I stayed in one that comes to mind. I stayed in one in Chicago, and it was they have a policy of 14 days, and then you have to leave for 30 days, and then you can come back. So no squatters.
Any more questions for Mr. Bagley? All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, so we'll open it up to the public. If there's anyone that would like to address the commission, you can come forward, state your name and sign in, and tell us what you have to say.
Good evening. I'm Larry Berger. I'm chair of the Leadership Council at Twin City Bible Church. And so we're next door neighbors. Our church is typically on Sunday morning, half students, and many of those are internationals. So the target audience of what Mr. Bagley is proposing overlaps and is consistent with what we are targeting. So that part of it's, we're certainly endorsing. The concern that I wanted to get on the record is that we share the driveway off of Indiana, and we also share the driveway that comes in from Lincoln. When the sorority was there, because they tended to stay for 3-4 years or more, they recognized that we had certain times when we would have children walking from the church to the house that's just to the east of the sorority house then, the hostel if we're considering this. And so when we have new people coming in on a regular basis, that institutional memory, so to speak, is not likely to be there as much. And it's important that we work with Mr. Bagley to develop safety policies so that on Sunday morning, Wednesday night, other times when we're going to have children and families crossing that we make sure that we're in agreement that we're going to come to some sort of controlled traffic movement and to be able to really put the safety of the children as a priority. So that's the main issue I wanted to get on the record. Other than that, we're supportive of the proposal.
Great, thank you. Mr. Hopkins?
Do you know the actual legal standing of the shared driveways?
The legal standing?
It appears to me that the one off Lincoln is actually half on the, what I'll call the hostel property and half on your property.
I think that's correct.
Okay. And the one off Indiana appears, as best I can tell from what we've shown, to be on your property. Is that your understanding, or?
I have to admit, I'm not
okay.
familiar with whether that is on our property total or whether it's shared, but yes.
Okay, so presumably the one that is half and half on each property is legally secure as shared access, because there has to be a, can't come up with words, a easement to make that work. So, okay, that's, I just wanted to make sure that.
I'll ask you since you're there. Is there currently lighting on these shared driveways? Like you mentioned Wednesday night time frame.
Well, there's lighting on the houses and from the church that do project to some degree over the shared driveway and the, but it's just more of a, how we make new people coming there aware that there's going to be certain times when families and children are going to be in that space, and we have to be a little cautious.
Okay.
Just curiosity, I know sometimes with Airbnbs, there are like policies that say things like that. So if there's a like written agreement where a part of, checking in is that you be aware of traffic, or could something like that maybe address the concern?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to address the commission? If you could come forward and sign in and state your name.
Hi, my name is Jeff Bant, B-A-N-T. I live on the corner of Pennsylvania and Busey. And I wasn't intending to speak tonight because my concerns lately have been about a traffic increase, a tremendous traffic increase on Pennsylvania Avenue, really high-speed traffic, and now an increase on Busey, even this summer when the students are gone. So this building falls right in that area, so I just want to say a couple of words about it. People use Pennsylvania now as a high-speed way to avoid going on Florida, and I bought a little thing for my phone so I can check the radar, and I've got an average speed of something like 45 miles an hour for most, and not just rush hours. But I've clocked things at 70 miles an hour. I've been passed on Pennsylvania doing 35 miles an hour by people that are in a hurry. And so and I'm going to make a presentation to the city council. I've already written it, and I'm just waiting for the appropriate time on that particular problem. But Busey also has noticed, I've noticed an increase, and I live right at the 0 point of this increase in traffic. And because cars now are starting to use Busey instead of Lincoln, they jump over the stop signs. I've talked to the two study groups that are studying Lincoln and Florida, and they regard my concerns, and they're very nice about it, but basically these are secondary concerns, and they mitigate them. They say, well, there's not that much traffic there, and we won't add much to it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm doing that with the city council or whoever, what's more appropriate. This particular project is right in the heart of that, and I think it's a wonderful project. I really admire this sort of reuse of a good building, and I'm glad that somebody's doing something with it instead of turning it into more high-priced apartments and things. And we talk about affordable housing, and we forget that we need affordable places for visitors to live when they're here just for a few days, and many of them students that can't afford $200, $300, $400 a night in a hotel and things. So anyway, so that's cool. But in regard to this project, my only concern is parking, and a lot of people on WUNA have been talking about parking over the last day or so. And we've pretty much talked it out, and I think everybody's okay with that. But for instance, and Kevin mentioned this, and it sounds like a small matter, but I don't think it is. I have a street parking permit, and I live right on the corner of Pennsylvania and Busey, but I can't park anywhere close to my house because the people at Farmhouse have all these parking permits. They park their car there all day long and all night long. They don't. It's cheaper than parking on campus, and so I can't park near my house. And particularly Farmhouse, like they have several places right on Pennsylvania that make it impossible to see the corner of Lincoln and Pennsylvania. So cars just fly out of behind these things, and many of the cars are 4x4s and things. But that's Farmhouse. But Busey, when the church is meeting there, the parking, all the streets are filled. And my only concern, and I don't think it's a big one, but it's something to just think about, and I know you can't ask questions, or I can't ask questions of you, but I'd just like to put it in your head that when I got my street parking, I could buy 2 or 3 guest permits, but I wasn't sure whether that was all I could ever buy. Is there a limit to what I can buy?
I do not know.
Okay. Well, my concern is that if they're cheap enough, one might have a whole stack of these things, and the residents of this place on football weekends, when you're going to get non-visiting scholars, you may have a flood of people parking on Busey. Busey's getting a bit more scary to jog down, to walk your dog down and all that sort of stuff, because people are flying through there quicker than they used to. And if there's more parking, more cars parked on there, it makes it harder to see cars coming. That was my own concern. And I think that was really, that was my only concern. Just to perhaps clarify guest parking so that it wasn't just, I keep a little, like 2 or 3 of them, so if I have visitors and I can't park them in my driveway, I give them a parking space. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Did you want to, I thought you described, I'm not familiar, I mean, I know the residence guest parking that he's talking about, but I thought you said that this would be something other than that.
I think actually Mr. Bagley might be able to answer it better than I, since he's been in contact with our finance department about what types of permits they would be. But I mean, my understanding is they would be akin to the guest parking permits, because we don't. I don't believe we have anything, that's sort of designed for this type of use, because we have not had this type of use. We haven't even allowed this type of use until 3 years ago. So,
So are those parking permits allow for 24 hours parking? I think I looked into
believe
that
so.
for some time before. There's a gap. You can't really park your car there for 24 hours.
for the guest permits,
I don't think that's an option as far as I know.
I'm not sure.
Well, we can offer an opportunity for Mr. Bagley to respond if you want to respond to any of the comments. No, that's okay. We got it.
All right, so I'll do the guest permit one quickly. So the sign, I have pictures of it in my phone, but there's the sign there that says no parking from if you don't have a permit, no parking from 3 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you do have a permit, be it guest, resident, it's 24 hours. For a guest parking permit, it's 1 day, but 24 hours. So it's not like, the next day it only works for 24 hours. So that's, I've done the research on that. And then to address Mr. Ban's concerns, I completely understand that parking is a main issue, and I'm going to be repeating a lot of things that I said and Kevin said, but I'm completely committed to making sure that this is less of a issue than even it currently would be as a Greek use. So I have my 10 spots. I imagine on the street in the Wuna streets, or Wuna streets, let's say I had 3 to 5 permits. That's substantially guest permits. That's substantially less than the 14 or 33 or 37 that each fraternity house is having as a resident. Third thing is my guests are my target demographic. I would say less than half of them would have cars, so that is less than a permanent Greek house resident who's living there for the entire semester or year. And then University of Illinois lots, covered that, bag meters, dollar cost average it all together. So that keeps it completely out of the Western Urbana area. And then my fourth backup option, if needed, is so I do this is to pay for whether it's other fraternities for unused spots or residents for unused spots. There's actually a website that I use. It's called Spacer, and I'm actually currently using it right now for my car, where I'm paying this guy for $120 a month for a parking spot in his driveway, and that's where my car is right now while I'm out here in Urbana. I'm hoping to bring that car and switch its plates to Illinois in about 2 months, but yeah, so that's my plan D if all of the above, were to cause overflow, is to, I will get those spots one way or another. And then to address Mr. Berger's concerns, although we did chat briefly before, but just for the record as well, completely understand his concerns, and I am committed to working with him and the Twin City Bible Church to do whatever we need to make that safe. The most drastic option would be I don't use that driveway. That driveway is blocked off. The east driveway that feeds onto Indiana, where the children walk to your other property. I don't use that, and it's purely South Lincoln. That's an option. Light up signs, barriers, whatever it is, I'm totally willing to come to a solution there. And I want to address one thing. It was talked about 45 minutes ago about, I think, and I've seen the documents. I was trying to pull it up on my laptop, but there's this plan to change some streets to one way for turning access, and I was trying to pull it up, but I just couldn't dig it up in my email. So if that plan, I've seen the plan and I read through it substantially and deemed that it wouldn't affect me because you could right turn into my property off South Lincoln, and then let's say if Indiana became a one-way and it only went that way, you could come to my property off South Lincoln. You could loop around, right turn into my property from South Lincoln, and then from my property right turn off and go north on South Lincoln. So just wanted to throw that one in there too. I think that's it.
We're going to talk about that later, so you can hang around if you want.
I definitely will.
Can cars, like if you didn't use the access on Indiana, the way it's currently striped, they're diagonal, is it possible for cars to turn around and then exit off of out Lincoln?
There is enough.
There's enough room there?
Yeah, so let's say that this is the house and they're angled this way. So here's my cars and my spots. It is possible to do that type of turnaround.
Okay.
There is enough clearance between the church, which is right here.
And the driveway has enough room for 2 cars to go side by side?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It wouldn't be an interstate level of width, but
no, yeah,
it's enough.
Just, yeah, slow is fine. Okay, thank you. I think does anyone have any other questions that have come up? All right, thank you.
Thank you again.
All right. Seeing as there is no one else that would like to address the commission, we'll declare the public input portion closed and now go into discussion amongst the commission and possibly entertain motions to vote. So is there any discussion on the proposal?
So I want to understand the difference of running a hostel versus running a hotel. I imagine if you need to run a hotel, it's subject to a lot different regulations of the standard of the hotel. Is there anything like that for hostel?
I think Kevin said that it will require a different level of, I don't want to misspeak you, but he did say that there would be a different level of inspection, a different level of evaluation. So at least around sort of the structure policies, yes. Am I correct?
I did say that, but I was saying with respect to its current use that's on its certificate of occupancy. So currently it's long-term living. So it's a higher standard for a hostel or for a hotel or a motel because it's transient living. So you're staying there for a night or two or a week or whatever. So there are more stringent standards for, like having exit signs and things like that. And, just fire code, which fire code and building code, it's my understanding, are the same thing. But I talked to our building safety official earlier just to clarify that hotels and hostels are both considered the same use from a building code standpoint. So, as far as we're concerned, it would have to be, meet all the same codes that we require, that a hotel would need. I don't know about sort of, operations and things, how different they are, but code-wise, they should be the same.
You're asking more about operations. I mean, does the city currently inspect hotels or?
Yeah, we inspect hotels.
Not for operations, not for building code stuff.
I don't think so.
Okay,
no.
so I mean, so it would be, from the city's perspective, it would be the same as a hotel, and whatever requirements there are from a building code perspective of hotels would apply to this, but
Right.
it's,
Yeah, it's the operation piece that so let's put it this way. When you have long-term resident with 67 as the total capacity, long-term residents are a little bit different in the sense that it might be easier to manage a group of people who you selected to be the house as your long-term resident. But when it comes to having 60 people staying in one structure seems to be really challenging to manage that. And that's kind of the concern I have. And I don't know, maybe as a plan commission, we're not supposed to talk about anything operation related, but operation is a concern I have since that's, yeah, I don't know.
well, we can, as part of the special use permit approval, we can place conditions that apply to the operation of the use. So some of the policies that were described by Mr. Bagley as things that he would plan to do, we could place as conditions, right? Right, Kevin? Like the limiting of not allowing alcohol, or limiting what was the thing after 10 o'clock? Quiet hours. I mean, the city has a noise ordinance that's in place already, but this would be restrictions that are more restrictive than the city's noise ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, so those are things that we could include as conditions, irregardless of whether or not these were policies that he intended to put in place.
Yeah.
8 hours, things related to hours, I think. But.
Right, yeah. Let's see, I'm just trying to see which of these 8. I mean, so number 1 says you can regulate the location, extent, and intensity of such use. So, being loud after 10 p.m. is a more intense use than not being loud after 10 p.m., I suppose. I'm not sure.
Number 6 could be related to the alcohol. I don't know.
I mean, and number 8 is kind of a catch-all in that you can have any other conditions deemed necessary to affect the purposes of the zoning ordinance. And the purposes of the zoning ordinance are many.
Okay, so we could address operational concerns through conditions, it sounds like.
You can. I mean, if you're going to do that, I'd suggest you be specific rather than a vague notion that 60 people might be too much or something like that. I don't know.
Right, yes.
So I lived in this neighborhood for a long time, and I have been really interested in group house. I see over the years people trying to leverage or use some of the bigger houses with like having run a group house. I don't know. It's the density and management that's something really stress me out. When you have a dense situation and I don't know how those are managed. Yeah, convince me. I don't know. I just have an uneasy feeling about it.
Mr. Hopkins?
So I don't have the material in front of me. We have a recommendation. The recommendation has no conditions, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So my reaction is we need to do this. And we need to do this because this is a near perfect example of what we need to accomplish on the east side of Lincoln Avenue with an attempt to maintain the Woona whole area and deal with the adaptive reuse with the creative reuse of properties on Pennsylvania Avenue. If the one condition that I would be inclined to add would be that there must be on-site 24-hour staffing. And I'm inclined to make that an explicit condition with the hope that this thing succeeds. And if it succeeds, it may get beyond, the founder's energy, let's put it that way. So I think we need to be, it needs to be clear that we expect it to be close to a hotel in operational supervision. But I think that's the key thing that we need to specify. But I would, I think this is what we need to do. It's part of making the edge on the east side of Lincoln a decisive edge with viable adaptive reuse of the buildings that are there in a way that's very close to the current use. Another thing that I think makes this almost ideal is that it's reversible. It does not involve massive reconstruction, modification of the interior uses or whatever. So if, for whatever reason, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, the use fails as a business, we're at least as well off as we are now. And I would argue better because we'll have used it for 5 years. And at the moment it's vacant. So I am highly in favor of this with that explicit addition to the motion, to the recommendation.
Yeah, I think maybe we should discuss a little bit more what other conditions we might want to include. I think saying that we expect it to operate as a hotel, I mean, there are good and bad hotels or hotels that are good and bad neighbors. So I think that's a little bit vague, and we don't have language that we describe for hotels. So I think we should try and articulate what concerns, what externalities that we think might be related to the use that we think need to be mitigated. So 24-hour staffing, if there's concerns, other concerns we've heard relate to parking. Other concerns have related to traffic and traffic management. I don't know that anyone brought up noise or the alcohol, but that's something that has voluntarily been suggested as policy by the applicant.
So we did not see the interior configuration of this building. And I think you read through some of the space. Again, my question comes to 60 people. Again, my question comes to strangers sharing a room. It doesn't sound right. So how many rooms are there? What's reasonable number of people, unrelated people you can accommodate?
I guess on that note, is the interior setup of this building that different from a normal hostel as they normally are? Does anyone have that idea right now?
Well,
I think this is, I mean, I have been in hostels. This is more restrictive than hostels I've been in, where I might have access to the kitchen. There might be dorm rooms, I mean, not dorm rooms, bunk rooms, where 6 people are in bunks. So I think
That is exactly what I was feeling uncomfortable. 6 people in bunk bed, not knowing each other, 6 unrelated people in bunk bed.
But it's their choice. Like, if I want to go to a hostel, I'm sorry, if I choose to go to a hostel, I have consented to that. Like, that is the environment. And then there are opportunities for people to be in double rooms. There are some private rooms. But there are people who travel to live with that. That is the experience that they choose to have. If I want a different experience, I would not choose a hostel. But there are a lot of people who travel around the world who want exactly that experience. But he described in the space that there would be single rooms, there would be opportunities for like smaller occupancies and then larger occupancies. And again, that is the choice. And there, with on-site secure, with people on site managing 24/7, that's actually more than most hostels offer. Most hostels don't have on-site management. So that, I don't know, it's like the model, like to be complaining about the design, it's what people would choose if they choose a hostel.
I would imagine there's occupancy limits per room, per the code.
So that's something that, so like in the memo, the reason that it's described as having 10 to 11 shared, let's see. Yeah, 10 to 11 shared rooms is because since it would have to go through a new code analysis, that is where you would figure out how many people could be in each room. So it's not known at this point, but code analyses, you have to get an architect to do that. So it's an expense that is, we're going to require it if this gets approved, so that, the issues there will shake out during that code analysis, and then that will identify what needs to be done to make the building adhere to building code.
So again, here's what I'm uncomfortable about. You are proposing such a big project without proper information for us to review. I don't see what's inside. I don't feel comfortable. Like usually when people apply for special use permit, there's a site plan, there's something done to show what's possible. Here, just few pictures with few numbers. I don't see the commitment.
Sure, if you come up to the mic again.
So I've done extensive research on exactly this. So the city of Urbana, and I've spoke to the building safety division about this. The city of Urbana adheres to the IBC 2021 code, and R1 properties which are hotels, have occupancy limits per room and for the whole building. And it specifically talks about shared dormitory environments where you need 50 square feet per resident in a room. So let's say a room has, 199 square feet. That is only allowed to have 3 people. Even though it's 1 square foot away from 200, it's only allowed to have 3 people. So the IBC specifically does reference dormitories as well, and that I've seen it online and done extensive research, and also talked to the building safety division about that. So, and obviously, it would need to get my certificate of occupancy through them subsequently if this were to get approved. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we don't usually get into the interior configuration of buildings. When we require a site plan, it's more of the placement of the structure on the site, but I don't think there's anything that's being modified to include the parking, right? Is that kind of why there was no site plan that was included?
Well, it didn't seem necessary in this case. I mean, there are already rooms in there for group occupancy.
Right.
There are already the private rooms in there. Sometimes we would require a site plan, but that's if you're changing sort of the use within the building, like for that church case that Chen-Shi brought up earlier. That one, they were converting it from a Greek house into a church with apartments. So we wanted to see what that layout was going to look like, and then you do need that to calculate things like parking requirements and such.
Okay, well, is there interest in coming up with other conditions, or are we content with Mr. Hopkins' suggestion? And if so, is anyone ready to make a motion?
So I'm not ready. I just want to clarify. So what I heard is the potential conditions would be around 1, 24/7 on-site management. The second one was some language around parking, which is already implied, but we want to be explicit about that. And then the third thing that I heard you say would be some language around the noise and just explicit around the alcohol policy. Were those the ones that it felt like we were feeling out?
Those are the things that I saw mentioned in the input that we received, both here and in the emails, and then just things that were raised by the applicant himself. So, we can think of other things.
Oh, the last one. I mean, I don't want to make it, first of all, I think making it burdensome would not be the right message that we wanted, but the last thing that I heard was around traffic, and I don't know how we say anything about that, but.
Yeah, I mean, I was asking the question about, accessing and from Indiana versus Lincoln, but it doesn't seem like that's very workable, and legally, as Mr. Hopkins brought up, it's probably more appropriate to maintain the access from Lincoln. So I think that's probably a non-starter. But we could think about parking if we want to have something related to parking. The only thing I think what Mr. Garcia mentioned around capping the on-street parking permits seems like something that might be something that addresses some of the concerns of the neighbors. But Mr. Hopkins, were you going to say something?
I would make a motion, but I don't have the document in front of me. And then we can argue.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll have a motion to discuss, and we can talk about language. So I moved that we send plain case number 2508 SU25 to the City Council with a recommendation of approval with the condition that there be 24/7 management presence on site.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Hopkins. Is there a second?
I have a second.
Second by Mr. Andreessen. Is there any discussion on the motion?
So since I now have a second, let me give my logic. I don't think that fraternity houses and sorority houses are prevented from having alcohol. Am I correct?
I have no experience with this, but
I think that's an individual choice of each one.
Right. What I meant is they are not prevented by their building occupancy permit from
Right.
having alcohol. I think the parking solution best served by creativity and flexibility and opportunity in most of the things I can think of to make it explicit don't accomplish that. For example, I don't know what cap to put, okay? And I don't know whether a cap of that is better than using lot F11 or reconfiguring the parking on site to improve pedestrian access around the church. And I think we should invite innovation and collaboration rather than add rules that we don't really know how they would work or what they should be. So that's why I put the one condition, but not any others.
any other thoughts on the motion on other conditions?
I remember I think there was discussion about when you have a conditional use permit, does it go with the property or go with the applicant? If
Mr. Garcia?
I mean, I can answer that, but Lou looked like he wanted to jump in. Okay. Yeah, so special and conditional use permits are valid until the use is discontinued for a period of 6 months or more. So it would go with the property, which makes sense over, if you got a special use permit to do something and you had it for 20 years and you were going to retire and wanted to sell it to somebody, I don't think it makes sense to require that new person to go through another process to do something that's been working for, for however long.
And to keep in mind the flip side, if it fails and is vacant for 6 months, the use permit is gone.
Right.
So yes, it goes with the property, not the owner, but it goes with the use, as you said, rather than the property in a way.
so, we want to put a condition on it needs 24-hour staff on site, and that is a condition. So we hope it will be managed properly, and if for some reason that it wasn't managed properly, even though it has 24/7 staff on site, how do we resolve that kind of issue? What kind of mechanism is there to resolve that issue?
Well, the having lived next to a very noisy student house where I eventually had to get the city involved and threatened to sue them, there are mechanisms in the existing city code that can be used to enforce things. That would be my answer, but.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a better answer than my answer. But I mean, my answer is, you know, with any use, you don't. With any sort of use that requires management, you have no idea if it's going to be managed well or managed poorly. You know, if it's managed so poorly that it becomes an issue, then yeah, there are mechanisms to deal with that. But you never know.
Same as any other use.
Right.
Yeah. I'm kind of with Mr. Hopkins in the sense that I don't know if I see the logic of adding more conditions. The condition around parking, it sounds like there's quite a few options and figuring out, you know, what is actually needed when it's up and running. I think allowing for flexibility on that makes sense. I think the city has a noise ordinance in place that's probably actually more restrictive than the quiet time starting at 10 o'clock. So, you know, that exists and there's means to enforce that. And then as far as the alcohol, you know, I leave that up to the applicant to set that policy or not. So any other discussion on the motion? Issue.
I think my conclusion statement, not really, but after this discussion, I think the other plan commission probably knows where I'm coming from. It's the management of a high-density transient housing. I really wish this become a lovely, sought-after place for people who wants to be there, become that community center. But I really would stress that it takes a lot to manage something like that. So that's it. Good luck.
Can I?
Sims.
Yes, and can I offer, his business model will be dependent on good management because poor reviews, I mean, most of how people find them, his success and failure is, does it live up to his design? And if it doesn't, it won't work. So there's some code enforcement, there's some other things that the city can do, there's nowhere, the law enforcement, right, like all of those things. But fundamentally, the model will not work if it's not safe, if people don't feel like they can go there, if it's not comfortable. No, he won't have business. So no matter how cheap it is, people just won't go. So it will.
Well, not necessarily. Even if the price is right, people will go, but it doesn't guarantee it will be a desirable environment. No?
For people who do hostels, the business model is good reviews.
Okay.
It's like an Uber driver.
All right. Any more discussion? All right, so it seems like we're ready to vote. I think everyone's clear on the criteria for approving special use permit at this point. So could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Andreessen,
Yes.
Mr. Hopkins,
Yes.
Ms. Sims? Yes. Ms. Yu
No.
and Mr. Allred.
Yes. Okay, so that motion passes. Do we have a date for council on that?
We're going to try and turn it around quickly and go to the July 7th meeting.
Okay, so that will go to council on July 7th. Moving down the agenda, that brings us to audience participation. Is there anyone that wishes to address the Plan Commission for 5 minutes uninterrupted on a topic of your choice other than the case here tonight? Traffic on Pennsylvania? Oh, he left already. Okay. Okay, staff report. Do we have a staff report? And I was going to say, I was a little surprised to see that we were still using the 2005 plan to assess this one. So maybe you can give us an update on the plan that we sent to council.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I could start. I can start with that. So the comprehensive plan, Imagine Urbana, will be going back to committee of the whole on the aforementioned July 7th date. That's about all that I have. I haven't received any further direction.
Can you tell us a little bit from when we approved it to now, what has been up and down? What's some input from City Council? What's the discussion, high level?
It's been a while since we've actually discussed it there, so I don't actually have that fresh in my head. There have been a couple meetings it's been on the agenda where it has not been discussed. I think, some of the concerns, I'm looking up and to the left, which is how you jog your memory. I know. I think most of the concerns have to do with the place types and with sort of the neighborhood one place type in particular. Some discussion along sort of the Lincoln Avenue and Lincoln Busey corridor area is where a lot of it's at. I'd say there's not much really beyond that. Just, I think some concerns about those items.
Have there been changes made to the plan that we've sent forward?
Very slight changes, just sort of, I'd say like tweaking a little bit of text to make clarifications versus making substantive changes. So I think maybe the most significant of those, now I'm testing my memory here. Oh shoot, I might have to think about that for a minute, but yeah, it wasn't there hasn't been really anything significant.
Can I ask, so assuming this eventually gets adopted and there's changes made, can you provide a summary to us in a meeting of what those changes were so that we're not working off of what we're looking at for months? Mr. Hopkins? Yes.
I was just going to comment, having watched the video for a couple of those meetings, I think Kevin's first comment is important. They really haven't discussed it much. It usually ended up being at the end of a meeting that had gone on too long, and it was sort of issues brought up, but no real deliberation for at least two, I think, that I watched. And for the last one, it was simply, it came up at the end and was delayed until the July 7th meeting. Nothing else was said. I don't know that there are any documents that have been handed out or circulated among the council. Wasn't much visible in the meetings.
Yeah, not much. I provided them with some, or did I provide them with those? I'm not sure if I provided, I kind of zoomed in on the place types and had printouts of those, just to provide some more detail. I did remember one sort of one change. So if you recall, there was the corridor neighborhood designation that we came up with. Sort of originally, some of that kind of extended, I'd say, mid-block between Lincoln and Busey. So it kind of, just in my attempt to have a nice clean line, it was going through the middle of the block. But I scaled that back. So the corridor neighborhood is only along Lincoln and doesn't even go like one parcel in for the most part. Correct. Correct. I think there might be an exception where, say, if there were an apartment building that went over 2 lots, like I think the one that's at Lincoln and Nevada might have a second parcel that's in the interior. So that's, unless there are more questions, I can move on to the next topic.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. So I'm just going to open up this link. I'm not sure have we discussed the Lincoln Avenue corridor study here at all? Did we have RPC come and talk about it? I don't know that we did. Okay, so.
Maybe when they first started?
Yeah, if so, it's been a while. So they're essentially at the point of having some final recommendations. So I'm just going to kind of run through these. This might be new information if you've never been aware of it. But I know I did show part of these recommendations during the Dutch Bros case at 809 West Green Street, which, since this is staff report, I'll say I think all of their plans have been approved, so they should be breaking ground on that sometime pretty soon. So there's I can open up the full engineering drawings here and zoom in if anybody's interested in checking it out. But essentially, so Lincoln Avenue, I'd say I'll just go over the big parts, and they're actually numbered in here, but sort of taking Lincoln Avenue from 4 lanes as it currently is down to 2 lanes with a central turn lane. That's one of the big pieces of this. So similar to what we've done like on Main Street through downtown, where that used to be 4 lanes back a while now. But we did that there. We've done it some other places. Initially, there were recommendations to close some of the east-west streets, but based on feedback that the RPC and their consultants received from folks, a lot of them are, I don't know that there's any complete closures. It looks like Ohio might still be. No, that just looks weird. No, some of them are turned to sort of right in, right out. I think, as Mr. Bagley mentioned, he mentioned some right in, right out. But adding bike lanes, continuous bike lanes along the whole of Lincoln Avenue, and this goes from Green Street up at the north. So here's that Dutch Bros site, and then doing things like adding some better crossings, so people can walk across there more safely.
Can I ask, so this is a point of contention for me, like, what are the better crossings? Because as someone who crosses Lincoln multiple times a day, I can tell you it's a long, straight street that cars, I don't know, Mr. Bant, I need to get his cell phone app, because cars are going 40, 45 miles an hour, regardless of what the posted speed limit is, because it's a long, straight street with no traffic calming measures. There's no street parking. When you start crossing the street, more likely than not, the car will swerve out of the way into the middle lane so that it can keep traveling at 45 miles an hour, as opposed to slowing down for people to cross.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, or I would like there to be a much better idea about what these kinds of how these crossings are going to be effective as traffic calming measures, because
Yeah.
just striping the street, with a crossing or putting flashing lights doesn't seem to cut it. When every other visual cue on a street like this is telling people to go faster than the posted speed limit.
Yeah, and I don't know. I assume, Dustin, you've probably gone through this, and you're not making those comments.
Yeah, I went through the original.
Yeah.
I'll admit I haven't looked at the revised one, because I thought most of the revisions had to do with not closing off streets, and really
Right.
didn't get into anything else about the crossings, which are, to me, much more important. as a
Yeah,
pedestrian and cyclist.
let me take a look and see if there was anything about those. And I can open up. There are more details in those schematics. I know I did make some recommendations probably about a month ago, just suggesting some sort of protected crossings, because there are some areas where you could have, say, you could put a median. The issue is with a lot of it is that there are still a lot of driveways on the east side of Lincoln, so it's hard to, it'd be hard to put in medians without cutting off access to a lot of those.
Well, even if it was just like a pinch point that was
Yeah.
created by a bump out on either side plus an island, the visual signal will be, I need to slow down when I'm going through these, as
Yeah.
opposed to what's there currently is there's no reason that I need to slow down, aside from this person who's starting to walk across the street, but I can just swerve into the other lane to
Right.
avoid that.
Yeah, so one of the recommendations is to install some of these, the flashing the flashing beacon crosswalks. Again, that doesn't do anything to narrow the street or anything. I'm just reporting to you. I agree with you that, that there are design
Well, I guess-
things you can do.
Yeah, this is
that-
my bigger question, is that it's my understanding that this is going to be something that gets adopted by the city, which relates to discussions we've had about plans and how they relate, other plans and how they relate to the comprehensive plan. Does this become a plan that gets adopted as an amendment to the comprehensive plan? In which case, why isn't it going through Plan Commission as something that we are reviewing in detail and providing recommendations on? How exactly is this being adopted by the city? Because when I look at the powers of Plan Commission in the city's code, this is something that's very clearly within our purview.
So to clarify on that, this is under contract, federal funded, done by RPC, but solely within the bounds of the city of Urbana, correct?
Yeah, hold on. I can't remember what the funding is for it. Why can't I? Let's see.
You're talking about the funding for the plan or the funding for construction?
No, I'm talking about,
The study.
what I'm saying is, whose plan is this? And I'm pretty sure it's the city of Urbana's plan.
It is.
So what Dustin is saying, to me, is absolutely correct. Either this has to be specified as a separate plan, which is okay with me, but then it has to come through the Plan Commission, or it has to be specified as an amendment, in which case it has to come through the Plan Commission, or it has to be specified as a study, which cannot be adopted.
Right.
And anyway,
Yeah, I mean, so it's called a study because these are just recommendations for things that we could do going forward, but it's certainly not the actual plans, the engineering plans and such to implement this.
so this
Well,
is,
well, it gets included as projects in the comprehensive plan, right? I mean, it's already
Yeah.
included as.
so it's viewed as a capital project?
But I believe we I believe we identified this, or we gave it the language of, it just said implement recommendations of the Lincoln Avenue corridor study, which is somewhat vague, I think, but
So this isn't the Lincoln Avenue corridor study?
no, this is. I'm just saying,
Okay. Anyway.
yeah, let me look at the,
I mean, to me, it's a study that is kind of acting like a plan. I mean, it looks, everything about how it was created looks like a plan-making process.
Yeah.
And the final document looks like a plan to me. And I've heard, and granted, I've only heard this in like articles in the News Gazette or something about this being something that the intention is that for it to be adopted by the city. And if it's going to be adopted by the city, it seems like it's something that should come through Plan Commission to provide a recommendation to council about what should be adopted. In which case, we should be a little bit more involved than just your presentation tonight. Like, give us I mean, maybe we need a study session or something with RPC here to, I think they were here at one point to present on this. It's been a while, but.
okay.
Treat it as a project,
Pardon?
or treat it as a project, if it's a CIP project for which there is a precursor plan. But
Yeah, well, the precursor plan would be the comprehensive plan, I guess. Right?
The old comprehensive plan, currently.
anyway, whatever.
Yeah, this is the enduring messiness, I think. I mean, we had the Complete Streets policy that was adopted as an amendment that didn't really make any sense. Like, I just want to try and avoid replicating this from the start with our new plan, you know, having these odd things that are happening. So thinking through the best way to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay. Well, I'll have some discussions and get back to you all on how we'll proceed with it.
Yeah. But I said all that because we've kind of missed our chance. I feel like there's a chance for us to provide input other than just, you know, as residents going on RPC's interface and providing input. But yeah, and my input is the traffic calming needs more work.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted me to look at on here? I did make a recommendation that that they should look at the corner radii because none of these schematics show corner radii being changed, where that's definitely a traffic calming and safety issue. So just to give folks a little bit of background. So if you, let me just pull up the whole schematics, or we can look at this. We can just look at Nevada.
Go down. To that
Yeah, actually that one was kind of,
Wait, right, no.
I'll just need to zoom in. Okay. Right.
No, I'm talking about the on
Oh, you want to go to
Springfield
this?
by
This?
the engineering. This is the
Yeah.
engineering quad,
Right.
right? That's exactly the kind of bump out that forces drivers to slow down as they approach this thing. I mean, they have the flashing lights and the signs and all that too, but I think the physical intervention makes a much bigger difference.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, I think,
Frequently is
yeah,
people a lot.
but we want to try and avoid solving these problems through having police enforcement. Yeah.
That you could talk about but the fact that people get, sorry, the fact that people get pulled over a lot
Yeah.
is unfortunately, because there are other parts of Springfield with similar designs that don't get the same sort of calming. As someone who drives down Springfield every day, and my daughter went to uni, so it was like an everyday thing.
Yeah.
I just know that the deterrent effect, even if it's intermittent, and I know we don't want to do law enforcement, but somehow I think we need both carrot and stick.
Yeah.
Because it's sucky. Because I know the more people have contact with police, the worse life is for everybody. But them being one block away and pulling people over intermittently keeps people at 30-something.
That's true. I was trying to avoid relying on that. I think there's
Well-
physical changes that can move us in the direction of changing drivers' behaviors, in addition to the threat of a ticket.
Well,
but-
and that's, I mean, the most effective way to address speeding is through design, because you can never have enough police to enforce stuff. But if you design your roads properly, people won't feel comfortable driving really fast on them. So
Yeah, and I don't feel like that's been addressed. What's been addressed is the the interactions between people crossing on the side streets and cars. But
Yeah.
crossing Lincoln, I don't know, it's insufficient to me.
I just wanted to point out, so like this, see, this corner radius is pretty wide. So when you drive and a corner radius is super wide, it just gives you, psychologically, you just want to kind of go around it pretty fast. It also increases, like if you look at this bike lane, it's showing, that's the crossing distance that you have to deal with when you're coming by in the bike lane. The crossing distance for the sidewalk isn't terrible here, but if you just tighten up the radius, you've suddenly shrunk the crossing distance on your sidewalk by a lot. So that was one of the main comments that I made on this.
Yeah, I think that, there's other options for the Lincoln crossing. You can have textured pavements, you can have a change in grade. I think the challenge is that this is a minor arterial, so trying to maintain its functional characteristics at the same time that it's got really intense development on either side of it and lots of people trying to cross it and not enough signaled crossings, then it's just kind of I have a class where we talk about this as a strode. It's something that is functioning in one way and has a design to match that function, but doesn't make sense with the surrounding land uses.
Yeah, and the functional characteristics that speed doesn't necessarily equal your road capacity. You can get as many cars through at a slower speed. Yeah. So a lot of times people think speed is.
Into the corner.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
So in part of this discussion, I think it's maybe in having this going forward. The Springfield example, so I don't use Springfield anymore, partly because my kids are no longer at uni, but also I used to use it as a way to go across town. I don't anymore because of the way it's set up. I use University, or more likely Bradley. Now, there's a big problem here, which Mr. Bond brought up, which is there is no easy alternative to Lincoln. There is no straight through alternative to Lincoln until Vine Street, which is a mile away, a mile and a half away, a mile away, I think. And that means that when you design this, you are displacing traffic. So the design and the plan ought to include the displacement. And by focusing on the corridor as a corridor, as if it's a engineering project, which is what this looks like to me. It looks like an engineering design prelim. You know, you're not actually planning because you're not actually looking at the interaction effects of what you're doing. And so I think there are specific implications of that. I think one of them is that you want to have very specific, but probably a relatively small number of pedestrian crossings. You definitely don't want a full curb cut like that at every one of the cross streets. And when I used to cross Lincoln, I didn't usually cross at a crosswalk because I was on a bicycle. But I think I'm a little concerned about the whole focus of this not really taking into account the implications of where stuff's going to go instead.
I think they looked at, I don't remember their original presentation, but I think they looked at like the level of service and whether or not these changes would degrade that significantly. And I don't think that that was an outcome of their analysis. So.
Yeah, but level of service is not the issue. It's
well, for its functionality as a minor arterial, which is what you're saying, right?
no, I'm saying, what do people do? The level of service in terms of what the engineers say will go through, you know, may be sufficient, but people are going to speed on Busey rather than go on Lincoln.
Well, yeah, you're assuming that it's going to be so inconvenient and slow down traffic, but I don't know that that's the case. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
What I'm telling you is my experience with the Springfield effect, what you're describing as what you want, is that that's what it did.
I think Springfield's a bit different, though, because Springfield's just 2 lanes. It doesn't have any center turn lane. I think what has typically been found is when you go from the 4 lanes down to 2 with the center turn lane, it actually makes traffic flow better.
Well, but
So
that's different from the questions of the pedestrian crossings and bump outs. And because there's no parking and no center turn and a center turn lane, a bump out actually has to take out part of a lane or cut into the center turn lane or whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway,
well,
I
it
think it's
probably,
more
yeah, it
complicated.
wouldn't make sense to do a bump out, but it would be a pedestrian island. But I
Anyway.
think the speed limit on Springfield is probably the same as the speed limit in this stretch of Lincoln, which is 25 miles an hour. But you're more likely to actually drive 25 miles an hour on Springfield. Here, people aren't driving 25 miles
I
an
get
hour.
you,
yeah.
but even I'm simply saying that if you make it so it's, even changing the speed limit to 25 miles an hour, it's changed who uses that road.
Not really, because it's not enforced.
But anyway, Yeah,
I
well-
hope that maybe we get a chance to talk about this, because I think it would be a robust conversation, because I think the question that you're mentioning is what people as there's a part of Springfield that's under construction, and I think it's what is causing so much neighborhood disruption around traffic, because people are now finding, right, people, as there's a detour, and so everyone's like detouring through neighborhoods that they typically never drove through and are looking for the most efficient way of detouring. And I see people driving through neighborhoods that they would have never driven through. And I think when there's a situation, people are always looking for, unfortunately, I don't know what it is, but they always look for like the most efficient route. And, yeah, unfortunately, but I think taking those things in consideration about like how it impacts the neighborhood, or where's particularly when I think about Lincoln and like where else you could go through, how many neighborhoods are gonna have people, if you invade them, and is that something that we want, and how do we weigh the cost and benefit? So I hope, again, I think it's a great conversation about when we think about our plan and what we want it and how do we create it. Maybe it's both design and culture, because right, if our plan includes both design and culture, so maybe there's a commitment through culture that will be aligned with design, because somehow we've got to have an agreement that we want people to not be hit by cars or bikes to be hit by cars. Like you, as Tracy Parsons says, we need to return to civility, right? Like we don't run each other over because it's just a nice thing to do.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, what the best, like, venue or how, I mean, we've kind of given you feedback. I feel like it would be nice to have RPC here to hear a discussion amongst us at some point.
Yeah, I'll talk.
Before, again, it depends what happens. If this gets adopted as something, certainly before that point. If it's just RPC at some point says this is done, and then it just sits on the shelf until the funding is available 10 years from now or whatever, something like that. But maybe.
Well, I
at some
will.
point.
I will ask them to come to Plan Commission so they can present on this and we can have a discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of interest amongst the commission to talk about this. So
Yeah.
I think it'd be good.
Okay. Okay. Other things to discuss in the staff report is after a long time on the Plan Commission, this is the last meeting for Lou Hopkins. And
23 years,
yeah,
that's what I'm told.
Since January of 2003.
yeah.
2002, maybe. I don't know, one of those years.
Yeah, so Lou, we are gonna miss you. I mean, you've been, yeah. I mean, it's been a pleasure. You've been here since much longer than since I've been here. But it's been fantastic working with you all these years, and we're definitely gonna miss your expertise and just you. Yeah, meetings maybe shorter. Yeah. And you're always welcome to come back and speak for 5 minutes on a topic of your choice.
If you really get me fired up, I'll probably come out and tell you off. But
Yeah.
don't count on it,
Yeah.
or don't worry about it. But it's been fun, but
But
after a while, fun needs a different variety or whatever. So
you have big plans for your Thursday nights. I'm just kidding.
And then we're really going to be like, waiting for Lou.
I also think that it's sort of time for people like me to get out of the way by age and perspective and persistence. It's good if there's turnover and re-energizing.
Well, with that age comes wisdom and experience, and we will certainly miss that going forward. So I know I've only been on the commission and chair for a small portion of your 23 years, but I certainly appreciate all the time and effort that you've put into the cases and the meetings. And you've set a high standard, a high bar for us to live up to. And if not, you can come yell at us.
In all seriousness, whoever comes up for it, just because you have much history and knowledge, and I think I share the Lou 101, but it's been, I think it would be nice just to know a little bit of that, particularly for people who aren't, like me, you know, who, for me, I was very green. Being directed, like to go, I would watch you and I would like, oh. Democratizing the process means making sure institutional knowledge is passed on.
Yeah, okay. We'll see what we can do.
All right. Any other items for the staff report?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to keep them coming. So you'll be seeing less of Marcus Ricci. He has accepted a position with the city of Bloomington. So his last day with the city is going to be July 9th.
Oh, wow.
So I guess you'll have the pleasure of me presenting all the cases from now on for at least a little while until we can get some positions filled.
Yeah. I mean, do we need to reiterate how important we think it is that the city hire more staff for the existing vacant staff positions, which now include one more?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can reiterate that. I will also be reiterating that too,
So let me understand, you are now the only person with Terry?
Yeah.
And there is still no community development director?
We will, July 7th, we are planning to appoint a new director. Everything is happening July 7th.
Can you announce the name, or is it?
I don't think I can announce that yet.
Okay.
But yeah, so tune in to July 7th
Okay.
for all the planning related stuff.
Well, that's progress. That's good.
It is,
news.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. So no study session. With that, we are adjourned at 9:19, something like that. Thanks, everyone.